Hello and welcome to Root Causes, the PKI and Security podcast where a pair of industry veterans talk about all matters digital certificates and PKI. I'm Tim Callan, Chief Experience Officer at Sectigo, and I'm here with Jason Sirocco, Senior Fellow at Sectigo. So, Jason.
Yes, Tim.
Is MSCA going away?
Yeah, kinda.
Okay. Do explain.
Yeah, look, I would say that most Microsoft CA, we're talking about Microsoft Active Directory Certificate Services.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. You're right. The word MSCA in principle has gone away, although everyone still uses it.
I still use it.
Yeah.
Everybody still uses it.
Yeah.
So it's been around an awfully long time. We're talking about on-premise PKI,
Right.
implemented usually years ago.
Yep.
For
the Windows stack.
For the Windows stack of technologies.
Right.
What is it really good at? It is good at getting a cert into something that is domain attached.
Yep.
And it just does that all day long. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? What of mine right now, if I ask myself, what is Windows domain attached?
Laptops.
Only partially even.
Sure.
Right?
Right.
So even with my Windows-based laptop issued from work, I'm only domain attached really for short periods of time.
Okay.
And everything else is on a whole other stack. Mm-hmm. Whether it's in the cloud, Linux, whether it's my iPhone, or sometimes I'm running on Android. I'm not on Microsoft stack.
Yeah.
And so you and I have done podcasts on the limitations of Microsoft CA. All right. Will it go away? Why are we asking that question? The question is being asked because it's long in the tooth.
Yep.
Microsoft, relative to all of its other technologies, especially security technologies, has not put in a lot of investment into it. You and I, during these wonderful Toronto Sessions podcasts, have called out visibility as being, the crown of certificate lifecycle management, and it's maybe one of the biggest weaknesses. I called it a strength of MSCA. I'm going to call it its biggest weakness is visibility.
Okay.
So therefore, you could have an obsolete certificate profile set up. How would you know it?
You wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know. And is the visibility of your certificate issuance really available in a modern governance program right now with that? Well, unless you've homegrown something, which you probably haven't, the answer is no. So therefore, should you get rid of Microsoft CA? Should you rip and replace? I'm going to answer to that right now. No, I don't think you have to rip and replace. I think there's big advantages if you do, but I completely understand the pain of people who choose not to. Mm-hmm. However, let me give you two options before you rip and replace.
Okay.
I'll give you two options. Modern certificate lifecycle management can augment Microsoft CA.
Yeah, you wrap it around Microsoft CA.
You wrap it around Microsoft CA. And therefore, all these problems of visibility, gone. Yeah. All these problems around, hey, I want to issue certs into things that aren't domain attached. No problem. We can handle that in a modern certificate lifecycle management system. Let me offer you a second one. And that's a whole storyline that you really, if you are having problems with your Microsoft CA or you want to go modern, that to me is like option one. Come to us and we'll talk about it. But I'll offer you number two, Tim. And this is this is the more interesting one in answering your question. Will it go away completely? Here's where it doesn't have to, and you can minimize the risk of the elephant in the room for Microsoft CA, which is, does Microsoft have a post-quantum plan for Microsoft CA?
Not that I know of.
Not that I know of either. And my goodness, if you're somebody from Microsoft who knows otherwise, for heaven's sakes, correct us.
Right.
Because I want to tell the truth.
Yeah.
And right now, I think the truth that I understand is that there is no plan for post-quantum in Microsoft CA. Ow.
So in that kind of time frame, that sort of settles that one.
Yeah.
Well, and this is also a bit of a forcing function, right? If you go back to saying Microsoft CA is kind of long in the tooth and it's not really heavily invested in, it's a real different decision from a roadmap management perspective to say, look, I've got this thing. It basically works. It has its limitations. People can choose to use it or not as they will, and I'm going to keep it alive. Versus saying, I have this thing that has been fundamentally compromised by advances in computing, and I either need to make the heavy investment to make it current or sunset it or leave this basically dangerous thing out in the wild, right? Those are two very different questions, and they could have very different answers.
Look, Tim, if you are a systems administrator that involves Microsoft Certificate Services, right? Microsoft ADCS.
Yep.
And you haven't kept up on things such as the attacks and misconfiguration issues that have plagued MSCA. Mm-hmm. If you're not aware about these things, we have podcasted about this, and we'll put that in the show notes for you to be able to click on and check out. But there are ways to evaluate your configuration to see whether or not you've exposed things incorrectly with Microsoft CA. Or, how aware are you of the fundamental flaws in Active Directory that are not fixed? Unless you go to, Azure AD, it's a completely different world, and MSCA doesn't exist there.
Yeah.
Okay? So, problems with AD. Configuration problems especially with MSCA. Where's the quantum plan? You can augment. You don't have to rip. Because I know a lot of people who are very invested in MSCA are invested in it because, well, I spent a lot of years getting my GPOs just right and I don't want to rewrite them. And I hear you. Yeah. But my goodness, I just understand the risks of having that thing running still.
Yeah, nobody's really setting up a new MSCA today.
If you are, get a hold of us. I'd love to talk with you.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I feel, right? It's legacy stuff.
It's legacy.
Yeah.
It's just flat out legacy. It's just, every implementation I've ever seen recently is like 15 years old. Mm-hmm. Not even like 5 years old, 15 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, no quantum plan, meaning you're running that thing past 2030 and you're going to keep a straight face?
Yeah.
So what are you doing right now? Because 2030 is not 10 years from now.
No. Yeah, it's 6 years from now.
Yeah. So I'm going to offer you not a perfect out, but I'm going to offer you an out. Mm-hmm. Those of you who have to keep it somewhere in your... In other words, if you're saying to me, you know what, my root of trust is that old box, then I'm going to say to you, okay, learn from the way that a public CA works in its trust model. Learn from the public guys. Learn from guys like Tim. How are public CAs set up? Well, we have a ultimate root. That thing isn't even on, right? All that CA did was sign, issue a key pair, and use that to sign a certificate on an issuing CA. The CA that's actually doing issuance, and perhaps this intermediate level of trust isn't even the ultimate issuing CA. But quite often, you go from root to an issuing CA. It's quite common as a trust model. Well, what happens if you used your Microsoft CA as a root?
Okay.
To basically extend trust from it. In other words, what's the advantage to that, Tim? You could create a cloud-based private CA. Great. And it would be your issuing CA. And it is only trusted because its root was signed by the root.
Okay.
And that root could be a Microsoft CA.
And what's the advantage of that?
The advantage of that is that you hold the keys.
Gotcha. Okay.
You hold the keys. And some people, really don't want to set up a root in the cloud because it's like, well, that's my PKI managed service provider is handling that for me. And we were talking earlier about if you don't hold the keys, you don't hold the cheese. Mm-hmm. It's not only true with cryptocurrencies, it's true with private CAs and any kind of CA. And so therefore, if you want to hold the keys and the cheese, you could use a Microsoft CA for that. Now, there's risks in post-quantum.
Right.
But maybe those are calculated risks because you have some kind of thing and you can't get out, you have no agility around your root roots.
Yeah.
That's a possibility. That's for real. I sympathize with that. But by doing that, you're minimizing your risks by not using it for anything else. Now, I'm sure that there could be people who could come into this room and say, false, Jay, there's attack vectors in post-quantum against that. There are. I'm not hiding that. What I'm trying to do is not be overly pedantic with it and say, you are reducing risk in a measurable way. Yes, it could all unravel if an attacker gets far enough in, but just be aware it's not a perfect solution, but at least it minimizes your risk in a post-quantum world for MSCA.
Yeah, I get that. It still feels like, unless there's something coming up for PQC that we don't know about, that MSCA should rapidly decline. Nothing ever completely disappears, so there'll probably be some around. But we can start a sort of, it's good, it seems like a sensible prediction.
Yep.
That's going to kind of be a thing of the past.
So why not, at the very least, put the monitoring function on it, put the augmentation scenario to work, and start
for as long as you're using
for as long as you can. And if you are using certificate issuance into domain attached things, and you want to plug certs into places it's working just fine, choose an end date for that you're going to swap over some other form of private CA.
And what's nice is if you've enveloped this into a CLM, which you were suggesting, then you keep that CLM, right? And so you're still going to have continuity in that regard. And if you end that CA and spin up something else in its place and all the rest, you can all still have all of that running in the same platform. You have visibility, you have continuous management, you have governance rules, you have all those things you're expecting.
Correct.
Yeah.
Tim, we did a podcast in this Toronto series about mapping certificate lifecycle management to NIST's Cybersecurity Framework 2.0.
Yeah.
And we could have said, how well does using Microsoft CA fit in Cybersecurity Framework 2.0?
Not as well.
It would have mapped very poorly.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And so therefore, you folks who keep telling me, I want to keep my Microsoft CA running forever. I laugh at that as well because it's, come on, guys. I know why you're keeping it, and it's not for the best of intentions. I'm calling you out.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Tim.
This has been Root Causes.